This is an interesting article from the Economic Collapse blog from Michael Snyder. And it was titled, "Would you like to steal $128 million?" And I thought for a split second, like, oh no, don't tell me another Bitcoin, Ethereum, something horror story or something like that. Nope, completely different. This is essentially about the government with their horrible policies, robbing Peter to pay Paul, massive debt increases, charging our children in the future. You know, basically they're paying for it, that kind of a thing. So still not good, of course, but for a second there, I thought I was going to talk about Bitcoin or Ethereum or something. What would you do with $128 million? Many people like to daydream about winning the lottery. And I have to admit that when I was much younger, I would do the same thing. If you were suddenly financially set for life, you could quit your job, buy your dream home, travel the world, and spend your days doing whatever you felt like doing. We only get one trip through this crazy journey called life. And an enormous mountain of cash could make the journey a whole lot nicer. So if you could steal $128 million and be absolutely certain that you could get away with it, would you do it? You would probably be surprised at how many people out there would answer that question affirmatively. Money is a very powerful motivator. And if the fear of getting caught was out of the equation, a lot of people out there would certainly be willing to bend the rules for a cool $128 million. But let's turn this around for a moment. What if someone stole $128 million from you? How would you feel about that? Every crime has a victim, and losing that amount of money would be unimaginable. Perhaps you think that this scenario is way too outlandish to even be considering. After all, who in the world could steal $128 million from someone and get away with it? Well, what if I told you that this has already been happening every single day? And what if I told you that this has actually been happening every single hour of every single day for many years? When Barack Obama entered the White House, the U.S. national debt was just over $10.6 trillion. And when he left the White House 8 years later, it was sitting just shy of $20 trillion. So during those 8 years, more than $9 trillion was added to the national debt. But for purposes of this example, we will round down to an even $9 trillion. When you divide $9 trillion by 8, you get an average of $1.125 trillion that was added to the national debt every year during the Obama era. Dividing that figure by 365 days, you find that an average of $3 billion, a little over $3 billion, was added to the national debt every single day during the Obama administration. And since there are 24 hours in a day, that means that an average of $128+ million was stolen from our children and our grandchildren every single hour of every single day while Barack Obama was president. When you borrow and spend $128 million that you do not have every single hour of every single day, of course, that is going to have a huge impact on the economy. I am often asked why we are not in a horrendous economic depression yet. And this is one of the biggest reasons. If we are to go back and take $9 trillion of government spending out of the economy over the last 8 years, we would be in the worst depression in American history, that is, you would know or have ever known right now. But even with all of this debt added, the U.S. economy has still only grown at an average yearly rate of just 1.33%, which is horrible, by the way, over the past 10 years, and that is absolutely terrible. Our leaders in Washington, D.C. were able to prop things up in the short term by going on the debt binge, not going on the, excuse me. Can I just start that one over again? Because I don't know what's wrong with my speaking ability right now. Let's try it again. Our leaders in Washington, D.C. were able to prop things up in the short term by going on the greatest debt binge in U.S. history. But of course, they have also made our long-term financial problems much, much worse in the process. Many people do not realize this, but the growth of the national debt was actually accelerating as the Obama era drew to a close. In fact, we added more than $1.4 trillion to the debt just during 1 year, which was fiscal year 2016. Once upon a time, a lot of people out there would really get upset about the growth of our debt. But these days, most Americans seem to have accepted that this is how we do things. Not this, I think he meant to say these. These fiscal liberals seem to have won, and our nation is steamrolling down a road toward financial oblivion. When you point out the economic disasters in Greece, Italy, Cyprus, Venezuela, and Zimbabwe, it doesn't seem to register with most Americans that our country is on the exact same path. By borrowing money, you can live way above your means for a while, but eventually you have to pay a price for being so reckless. This has been true all throughout human history, and it will be true in our case as well. In a letter to John Taylor back on November 26, 1797, one of my favorite people of all time, Thomas Jefferson explained that he wished that he could have added just one more amendment to the U.S. Constitution. It's one that I mention from time to time myself, and I mention his story because what he is asking for, boy, oh boy, do I wish the same thing. And he says, I wish it were possible to obtain a single amendment to our Constitution. I would be willing to depend on that alone for the reduction of the administration of our government to the genuine principles of its Constitution. I mean an additional article taking from the federal government the power of borrowing. And I want to cover something not in this article real quick. I mention it all the time, but you guys who've been around me a long time, you know this already, but understand that I got a lot of new subscribers who may have never heard this before. So that's why I repeat these things a lot of times. Abraham Lincoln, head of the North Union versus the Confederate, the South, or Confederates, the South. They were both running out of money. Money back then, those days, silver and gold. Silver and gold, silver and gold, says Cornelius, or whatever his name was, the little Rudolph cartoon. Anyways, both running out of silver and gold. Troops do not work for free, and it was getting a little dicey. So the North, struggling just as much as the South. How are we going to pay? We're running out of money. So Abraham Lincoln has an idea and says, I'm going to create this dollar called the greenback. That's where the term came from, by the way, greenback. And you may hear that nonsense. Oh, the greenback pulled back today. Oh, no. They may call the U.S. dollar the greenback sometimes today. It ain't even on the same planet as the real greenback, okay? Greenback. So the greenback was a dollar that was printed, given value by the government, just as like gold and silver was. And the people had faith in it. They won the war. And the key was they didn't borrow the dollar into existence with interest and bonds and whatnot. They simply printed the money and used it, spent it on government expenditures. Plain and simple, as in, expenses is more appropriate word here. But it worked fine. They won the war. He decided this worked so well, I think we should keep it. And promptly had his head blown off. What was it, John Wilkes Booth or whatever his name was, right? Had his head blown off. Another crazy got in there. And the greenback went away, and we have to borrow our money into existence now. So if you want to fix all these problems, go back to what we had. Go back to the greenback. You print the money, you assign the value of the money, and you pay all government bills, everything, which would mean you will never have a pension problem again the rest of our lives. You will never have to charge property taxes, income taxes, any fees, gone. Why? Because the government is going to print it and just pay all the fees. Use it without having to collect taxes. There will be no point in collecting taxes, which means you would also have the true 100% definition of private property. Because you think you may have private property now, but just try to stop paying those taxes and see just how private that property is and who comes and takes it from you and sells it off. So, having said that, Thomas Jefferson wrote extensively about how the government debt is a way for one generation to steal money from another generation. And what we are doing to our children and our grandchildren is absolutely inexcusable. The term child abuse is not nearly strong enough to describe what is taking place. And I don't know why more people are not seething with anger over what is being done to them. I am going to do whatever I can to stop this madness, and I hope that you'll help me. Again, he's trying to run for Congress. I hope Michael Snyder kills it and wins massively. Have you ever run up a lot of credit card debt? If you really wanted to, you could go out today and start living like a millionaire by running huge credit card balances, but eventually a day of reckoning would arrive. And you would get to a point where your debts were no longer sustainable. It is the same thing on a national level. We have been living way beyond our means for quite a while, but we have been stealing from future generations in order to do it. Take care, my friends.